everyone. Welcome back to Murphy's Law Podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today, especially with our guest, Chief Stephen Redfern. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on our podcast to talk about leadership during the midst of chaos and all the things that come with it. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, man. Steve Redfern has been the chief of police for Boulder for some time now, but has a rich history in law enforcement. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about all the things you've led through. You've led through some pretty big things and just about your whole life experience. Sure. So kind of start talking to us about who you are, what you're about.
Yeah. It seems like just yesterday I was starting out in law enforcement, and now I walk into work and I'm like, oh man, I'm in charge. I'm the chief. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So I'll work backwards, I guess. I've been the chief of the Boulder Police Department now for about a year and a half, full time.
Has it only been a year and a half?
Well, prior to that, I did 9 months as interim chief. So,
okay.
And in that role as interim, the city manager said, "Hey, you're not a placeholder. Run the department."
Yeah.
So really, since January of 24, I've been in that number one seat. Mm-hmm. And so 2 years prior to that, I was deputy chief in Boulder, and I came to Boulder in 2021 after retiring from Aurora PD. After about almost 23 years there. I retired from Aurora as division chief of operations, where I believe the last command I had there, I had 400 officers in my chain of command, which is about double the size of Boulder. And so I went from, a larger department, pretty large department, to more mid-size. And so it's great just seeing much different cities, of course, much different ways of policing. And it's been great. Aurora, I had a great career. I got to do all the things I wanted to do, all the fun stuff. Now I sit behind a desk, and so luckily I got all the fun stuff out of my system early on. But I got to really do a lot there. I got to work in a lot on the investigation side, major crimes, homicide unit. I was a supervisor of that unit for quite some time. Did narcotics. I worked in narcotics. That didn't come out right.
Good clarification.
Yeah, we can't do that. Auto theft, field training, and then, I started in Aurora at 21 years old, so that was really I grew up there for first real job, kind of, because prior to that I worked as a dispatcher in Jeffco at Jefferson County Sheriff before I was finishing college and going to school. So really full-time in law enforcement since about 18. Lucky to know early on what I wanted to do, and it's just been nonstop. So,
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's good.
I love it. So, when you transition to let's take you back to the day you became a division chief, or you kind of rose up through the ranks. What was I'm not even going to say division chief. Mm-hmm. What was the rank where you felt the shift in responsibility, where you felt that weight just come on you and say, mm-hmm. "Oh wow, I feel the weight of all the responsibility of my officers"?
I think at every level of supervision you feel that, but as a sergeant, you've got your core team and you're out on the street with them. I think for me, where it really hit home probably was the commander rank. And so I was a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, commander. And as commander, I was the commander of Aurora PD District 1, which they just switched their districts. It used to be everything west of 225. So most diverse area, most crime, and it was just awesome. I had 150 officers in that district. But it was like I was my own little police chief there in that district. I was the highest ranking guy in the building. Everybody else was at headquarters, and so that's when I was really like, wow, okay, I am the decisions I make have a huge impact. The day-to-day, on the street decisions of lower level supervision was super important. But when it truly was, I can really kind of set the tone and have just that good or bad, and it really lies with me. And so even as a captain, I had the commander right above me. And so, commander was the first time I was like, okay, there's nobody here looking over my shoulder telling me what to do. And part of that was good, but then part of it was like, man, my decisions have very potentially large impact. So but I liked it. I took that responsibility very seriously, and I loved it. When you have highly functioning teams, it's just no matter where you are in the organization, it's great. But when you're kind of the one at the helm, it's really rewarding I don't get to go arrest bad guys anymore, but it's rewarding when you support your people that do and good outcomes.
Absolutely. I always say to a lot of folks who ask me what it was like to rise to the ranks so quickly, I always tell folks that, the higher I went in government, the least amount of power I actually had. I always think that the perceived power and authority actually lies in the mid-managers. The people that are on the ground can actually talk to the officers and the people that are doing the work. And, they look at you and me as chiefs, as kind of figureheads. And yes, we do make decisions. But at the end of the day, that decision is really implemented, socialized, and really owned by the mid-managers who then ingrain it into the officers and, frankly, all the people that work for you. So talk a little bit about that. How, as you've gone and now you run the city of Boulder's police department, how do you make sure that you have the same, you're on the same bandwidth as your middle managers?
Yeah, so Boulder, it's a little easier because it is a smaller organization, which is cool. Aurora was so spread out. When I was a division chief of patrol, I had 3 district stations, and so I really had to make a concerted effort to get out and go and visit the different stations or bring everybody into headquarters. And pretty much now I see all of my commanders, most of the sergeants, even the night shift ones in the morning. I get to see them all the time face to face. So it's much easier for me to number one, just kind of gauge how things are going. And, I have the luxury a lot of times I'll go sit in the briefing room and just sit in the back and listen. And you really kind of pick up on vibes, you pick up on themes, and you get to know your people really well. And at least where we are now in Boulder, most of the officers have zero hesitation. Even patrol officers come be like, "Hey, Chief, here's an idea," or "Hey, Chief, can you let us know about this thing?" And so that's a big part of it, is being accessible and not, we've all worked for bosses that we don't know what they do. They're in some office somewhere with the door closed, and you're like, you see their car in the parking lot, you're like, that's weird, I never see them. I don't want to be that guy, even though my schedule's rough. And to your point on kind of impact, I think for me, I can come up with the best ideas in the world, and sometimes I think I have good ideas, but it's only as good as the people, to your point, that are implementing them. And so for me, I've got the right people in the right places currently, and I've not had to bring any outside supervision into our department, which I think is really great. All of my division chiefs, a lot of my commanders have the organizational experience that I don't. And so for me, it's about trust. And there's times that I've brought in new ideas and they're like, well, we've never done that here. And luckily we have a level of trust where I'm like, I understand that, but trust me on this. And I'll commit on most things. Like, hey, if it doesn't work, we'll pivot, but give me a little bit to see if this works. And so having that trust, which was great for me, is the 2 years of deputy chief before being chief. I didn't just come in blind and cold, and they knew who I was. So I really try to make sure I connect. I just did a sergeant's meeting, all sergeant meeting, just me.
Nice.
And the sergeants.
That's neat.
And that was their request. So normally we do a quarterly sergeant's meeting with all the commanders and other chiefs, and they're like, we want to just talk to you without all those guys in the room. And they didn't say anything. They weren't doing it to, I got to tell you all these bad things about the commanders. It was just they wanted one-on-one time with me, and it was cool. So accessibility is a big part of that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I would say, that's a huge piece of culture setting. I'll never forget when I was in the city of Denver, they weren't used to that, the public safety director of Denver having access to sergeants. And I always said to every police department I ever worked in, the sergeant is the most important role in a police department, period, hands down.
I say the same thing.
And during COVID, when we didn't really know what COVID was, we were sitting in our conference rooms with all the chiefs and division chiefs, and everybody's making these decisions and telling me what I should, giving me ideas on what they think we should do and what the officers should be affected. And I'll never forget the day that I said, hey, I want to do a meeting with all of our sergeants. And you would have thought that I asked for a meeting with Mother Teresa and the president and, all that, because they were like, well, why? Well, that's not, and it was so cool because when I met with all of them, I came away with knowledge and, frankly, ideas that I would have never thought about.
Yeah. Well, right, because they're the ones out there every day.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I'll give you a funny anecdote about that is, we thought the biggest thing they were going to ask was for PPE and mask and all that kind of stuff. They didn't care about any of that. Now, granted, we got that stuff for them. The thing they said is, directors, what we need right now is pens. They're like, we're out of pins, and they can't find the pins and the pin.
Okay.
And I was like, pins? I kid you not. We went and got some pins that were weatherproof because that was the biggest thing. In the cold, the pins weren't working.
Glad you were able to help with that.
I mean, it was an easy fix.
Hey, whatever. If that makes
Oh my gosh, you would have thought I gave them $1 million, right?
hilarious.
So it's those small things, small impacts that make big impact, or small things that make a big impact. So Chief, talk to me a little bit about your work and its alignment in kind of chaos. You have led through a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff. I want you to kind of unpack some of that. I always say this, everybody. Being in this world, in the policing world for 19 years, I've recognized something that is impactful. I say there's always two types of chiefs out there. There's a wartime chief and there's a peacetime chief. And there's chiefs that are really, really good in peacetime, and there's chiefs that are really, really good on leading through chaos. I would say you're a hybrid because you're really good at leading through peacetime, but preparing for chaos.
I appreciate that.
And so I would like you to kind of unpack some of the things that you've dealt with in the last few years as a police chief.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I sometimes, throughout my career, I had a label most days, and that started early on with the first word I can't say, the second word magnet.
Yeah,
and we all know what that. Somebody gave me a patch for my vest at one time with two symbols, and it fit that word, the blank magnet, and that was just day to day. I mean, things would I'd be driving down the street, and yeah, granted, I'd look for it as an officer out on patrol.
Of course.
But things would just happen, and I remember working in dispatch and be like, oh boy, Redfern's working tonight. We know that some things are going to happen. And I'm like,
hire another dispatcher.
Almost always, I'll tell one war story of just my timing. We had been probably, I don't know, late 2000s. I was a sergeant, and we'd been looking for this guy had robbed probably 40-some businesses in Denver and Aurora.
Wow.
And he was robbing like convenience stores, gas stations, liquor stores, and it was very hard for us to figure out like pattern-wise because he was not just targeting a specific business. We had surveillance ops every night, and then we took a break for some reason. I don't know why. And I go back to patrol. I walk into Jimmy John's up on 40th and by the airport. And I walk in, I'm starting my shift to get a sandwich, and I walk in, and all the employees are laying on the ground. I'm like, it's the middle of the day. I'm like, what? They're like,
oh, no.
How'd you get here so quick? And the guy we'd been looking for like 2-3 months of all these robberies had just ran out. I mean, I didn't see him, but didn't catch him, but it was just like people. And
That's
I
a movie.
Called it out before 911. People are like, how? I'm like, I don't know. It just happened. So, but that theme kind of stuck with me throughout my career where things would just, if I was working, it was going to happen. And so for me, I look at that as an opportunity. Sometimes, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a lot, and it is. But, for me, the early on, thing I was involved in way back when was Columbine. I was a 911 dispatcher. At the sheriff's office there, I'd worked all night. Columbine happened. I came right back into work. And so that was my first kind of a big critical incident that I was a part of, not directly at the moment, but in the definitely, moments and days after. And then, Aurora, I'll tell you, my fourth day on the street, fourth day of field training, we had a call of a guy that had murdered a woman. Very weird call, but 911 gets called and hang-up call. It's 6:30 in the morning. Nobody, no conversation on the line. Very regular call. The cops, first two officers, go knock on the door. The guy comes out shooting, and it's like a literally 20-minute running gun battle through this apartment complex. And I'm in my fourth day of field training, and a couple guys from my class ended up being involved in the shooting, and it was insane. And of course, as a 21-year-old kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this was so exciting. And notwithstanding that somebody had been murdered, but like
course.
That was how I started my career in Aurora. I was like, oh boy, this is not like where I grew up down in the quiet suburbs. And so that kind of was the theme. The big, for me, big impactful incident in Aurora was the theater shooting in 2012. I was a sergeant on the street that night and was, ended up playing a pretty big role there just based on how I got there and when and with who. And that was, at the time, the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. Didn't stay there that long because obviously we have them all the time now, and they're just more.
Which is so sad to see.
Yeah, it's terrible. We wish it would have never
started.
That would have been it, and we'd never have a worse one. But so that was really impactful for me. And I was just a sergeant, but made some decisions that night along with my guys that we got credited for saving a bunch of lives and You try not to think about the people that you couldn't save, but those things like nights like that, I remember thinking, man, if I'm done after tonight, if I'm not a cop anymore, like that's why I became a cop, was to help people, and it wasn't in the traditional sense even of police work. We ended up just jumping in and trying to save a bunch of people that had been shot. So
Wow.
that was impactful. And then fast forward, been involved in a couple things in Boulder. One was the King Soopers shooting in 2021, where Officer Eric Talley was killed. I still worked with Aurora, but I was on scene that day as part of my work with the Fallen Hero Foundation, and that was incredible.
Thanks for all that hard work on that, by the way.
It's been an incredible part of my career, being able to help those agencies. But that's actually kind of what led me to Boulder a little bit. And then this summer, June of 25, we had the terrorist attack on Pearl Street, which again, guys hurling Molotov cocktails and using an improvised flamethrower, and it's just like, okay, this is different, but I know this world. Let's go. I got this, and I'm really proud of the work that we did as a department, and from the very first officers that ran in there. And that one was different because it became an instant international news story, and a lot of weird dynamics. And I'll tell you, I've talked to some other chiefs about this. It is different when you're in that number one seat when that stuff happens, because all eyes are looking at you. And
That's right.
Okay, let me take a moment and get my act together, and then here we go.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
I think that's unless you've witnessed it, and I too have been in that seat before, where the international news, they're flying in Lester Holt and all the rest of them to talk to you.
Yeah.
And what was that moment where you were like, okay, this can go really bad or really good?
Well, it kind of did go really bad early,
Yeah.
and it wasn't anything we did or didn't do. And I'll tell you about it. I still get some hate mail over this. We had the attack, and it was the attack was very specifically targeted against Jewish people.
That's right.
Elderly women. It was just horrendous. And but I knew, because of the polarization with everything that was going on with Gaza and everything, that it was going to be a big thing. And so I get to the scene. I was one of the first supervisors on scene. It was a Sunday, and I think we had one sergeant working, and I threw on my police chief polo and jeans and gun, and so I got there and helped stabilize some things. And then we knew we needed to get a statement out quickly, and so knowing that later we would do a big press conference, I'm a big fan of the uniform and tie and shine boots but on scene it's like, we got to do a press briefing. And so I talked to the special agent in charge of the FBI, talked to the city manager, our PIO, our comms people. I said, I'm going to give some just brief remarks. I'm not going to talk about motive, because we were still interviewing the guy, tons of witnesses, and
lots to investigate.
Yeah, so we pretty much knew what the motive was. But I come out in my press briefing and say, can't comment on motive. It's too early. That would be premature. At the same moment I do that, the FBI director tweets out, this is an act of domestic terrorism that we're investigating. And so unbeknownst to any of us there, so I come off the press briefing, and the PIO's like, read this. And I'm like, okay. Instantly, I got accused of trying to cover up what happened, that I was pro-Palestinian. I'm like, I'm just trying to help investigate. We're just dealing with what's in front of us. Got for 2 or 3 weeks just hate mail from all over the world. 2 hours later, we did a press conference, and we called it terrorism. It was but by then we knew we had a better picture. So it was an interesting lesson in just being ready for whatever happens and comes your way. But also, we were heavily focused on our local folks and our community, especially our Jewish community.
That's right.
They were good. We already had pre-established relationships. They trusted us already.
That's
and
right.
so having to drown out that noise of people that were not necessarily involved was challenging. But it was impactful for me to realize little Boulder here had this incident, and now I'm getting inquiries, media, as well as just people from all over the world sharing their feelings about me via email and phone calls. So it was crazy. It was crazy.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because so I've been a city manager, I've been a police chief, I've been the public safety director. The thing that I always prayed about was, I hope today that my noun of my city, Denver or Brighton or Englewood, doesn't become a verb or an adjective.
Yep.
Because, you hear that's kind of what happens when leadership is looked at differently. And I never say that you make the wrong decisions. I always say when leaderships look at differently, because leaders make decisions based on the facts that they have.
Right.
And I never like to think that someone makes it out of ill intent, right?
You would hope not.
I would hope not. But we can unpack that later for a whole different podcast. Yeah. But when I'm talking about local leadership, you look at all the cities that have that, kind of that brand of that incident that happens. I got to give you a lot of credit because Boulder did not become that. And I think that's partly because of your leadership and your transparency and your ability to see the forest through the trees, making sure your local community was taken care of, making sure that you were completely transparent on all the things that happened with that. But I think it's really important to know that you called a spade when it was time to call a spade.
Yeah, of course. And I would, if it, God forbid, happening today, I would take the same course of action. And partly because my thought in the training I've been through on media and everything else is you cannot walk back something as big as, hey, this is terrorism.
Yeah.
And we had to have all our facts straight. And so
that's right.
It was interesting. I appreciate it. And I give our communications team just tons of credit because the messaging on that and it was a heavy lift. And I can't claim nearly much credit at all. It was much more so the comms team and the folks that had to live it and wrangle just a massive amount of media. It was a challenge.
Wow. So, Chief, let's pivot a little bit, and it's along the same lines, but let's just talk about our profession of policing today. Policing, as you know, this podcast is sponsored by SurePass, which is all about verified trust and really verification of authority. What we found is that just people don't trust us as much as they used to as police departments anymore. But it's not just police departments. It's really government. There is a massive trust shift when it comes to the American public and their trust in the government institutions. How do you see that show up every day in your line of work as a police chief of a medium-sized city?
Yeah. It is different, and you're right. I remember when I was growing up, we, especially to police, it was assumed that we had good intent. We had the benefit of the doubt in most cases, and that is dissolved for a number of reasons, some of which we've created our own. I mean, we have, as a profession, have not done ourselves favors in a lot of situations. But then, somewhat unfairly, one thing happens over here, and we all get painted,
That's right.
in that same with that same brush. Systemically, yes, of course, we know some of the inequities and things that have gone on in our profession over decades, long before any of us were even involved. And I think we've made some pretty good strides to correct and change things. But government as a whole, I think it shows up every day with people still call 911 when they need things. People still expect, when they turn on their faucet, that water comes out. But what we don't necessarily get is just that benefit of the doubt, where if we're going to tell you something, if we're going to ask, say, hey, this thing is happening, people are very skeptical. Even when we've had major critical incidents, people are like, the conspiracy theorists, a little bit different, but just the general public is like, okay, maybe that what you're telling me as the government is true, but prove it.
Yeah.
Show me. And, some of it might be with policing, some of it might be body cam. And we've seen that now with juries where if it's not on video, they don't believe it.
Yeah.
Even though, when we started, we didn't have body cams. We went in and they judged us based on our demeanor and our word and all that. And so it's just it's an odd scenario. And whether it's in Colorado or on a federal level, it's politics. Government's always been somewhat political, but it just seems to be so much more political now than it ever was, and so much more divided. Policing, I think, should be apolitical.
Amen.
I get pulled into it every day.
Say that again.
It is.
Say that again. That's so important, I think.
100%. And the sheriffs in Colorado run, and they run as a Republican or Democrat. But once they're in office, to me, it shouldn't be political, but it is. And the amount of politics I get pulled into, even though I don't want to, is interesting. But yeah, overall for government, and COVID didn't help anything. COVID was so terrible on so many fronts of just everybody's working from home, even most government, not the cops and firefighters and other folks. And we lost that face-to-face communication. And so everybody relied upon Twitter and other social media platforms. And, we could try to tell our story, but everybody was at home and didn't know the other person behind the keyboard. And
That's
it was so devastating. I just think it was a turning point. And we've worked super hard to bring that back. And I know every jurisdiction's doing the same thing of reestablishing that trust, but it is a slow process.
It is. It's a slow process, but a meaningful one. And I think that as long as we have chiefs like you who are dedicated to keeping the first thing first, which is community, I think we're going to be in just fine shape. I think, I always say the history of America is strong, is very short. The fact that we're celebrating 250 years.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be so much more based on all the things we've been through in our history.
Yep.
But I will also say that we've learned a lot in 250 years and come a long way. And I'm looking forward to how much we're going to grow over the next 250 years. I think I'd love to end with, what do you think policing is going to look like in 250 years?
Oh, boy. I don't even know what it's going to look like tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're talking technology, when you're talking AI, there will always be a human. There has to be a human component in policing no matter what. But I think, look at everything in the last 5 years and how much it's changed. I think expectations from the community will change, and we have to hear those, or else we end up getting completely disassociated.
That's right.
But just the profession itself, expectations aside, technology right now, talk about skepticism of government when we're trying to bring in new technology, and people, rightfully so, technology is moving so fast that we come out with this great new product and people are like, all right,
what is that?
Tell me all the ways this is going to harm society, and we have to be very good about educating. We're dealing with, right now with license plate readers, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think technology is going to be a game changer. I think when it comes to officer safety, when it comes to wellness and ways that we can better use technology to make sure our people are okay. There's so many cool implications where I'm just really excited to see where it's going. The problem we have is we've got to keep good men and women interested in this profession. And that is where, not just to apply, but also to stay in it once we put the time and effort and energy and money in training them. And so it's an interesting balance, especially with the newer generations, is all of it's exciting, but we've still got to have the people that when all else fails, when that worst day comes, are going to get up and run in that building to deal with whatever. Right. And that's on other public safety partners too, fire, EMS. Like, we still have to have the people doing the job, but I'm really excited just to see how much of a game changer it is, and how much tech will help with efficiency and all that stuff. But I think we also have to be on our toes, because with the way technology is now, the days of us saying no comment or, hey,
it's over.
We're the government, we'll tell you what you need to know, or done. So it is nonstop. And,
that's right.
I'm glad we still have people willing to do it. That's for sure.
It's true. To all the officers out there, both the chief and I, thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you're doing for our communities, and keep going. Chief, lastly, if you could fast forward 10, 15 years or however long you have as chief, and you're on your last day and you're about to give one piece of advice to the future chief of your agency, what would that be?
Take care of your people. Take care of your people. As you mentioned, I believe community is important. If our people that are going out to do these terribly difficult and challenging jobs are not well, we know all the things that happen. So, and one caveat with take care of your people is hold them accountable. Yeah. And keep their careers alive as well as them.
That's right.
That manifests in different ways, but take care of your folks. And it's easier said than done, but it requires you put in the work, for sure.
I love it. Chief, thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah.